Hi, this is your Sapna Bhartiya and welcome to TFR Let's Talk. Today we have with us Amjad Afanah, founder and CEO of HoundDog.ai. Amjad, it's great to have you on the show.
Likewise, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
There is a lot to talk about. First of all, this is the first time you and I are talking, so I would love to know a bit more about the company. You folks also raised, 3.1 million seed round. So there are a ton of things to discuss. But before we go into all those details, just really tell us a bit about what was the idea behind creating this company? When was the company created? What problem you saw which was still unsolved that led to the creation of this company?
Yeah, thank you so much. So the company was founded last year in 2023. And just to kind of briefly describe what it is, right? So we built an AI-powered code scanner that is able to do two things. One is detect and stop PIIs, personally identifiable information, from leaking into logs, files, and third-party systems and other mediums. And then the other part is since our code scanner is able to understand the data flows within a code base, it's also able to automatically generate the records of processing activities that's needed for privacy compliance, namely GDPR. And what really inspired this company was before starting this company, I was a VP of product at a data security company, and like many others, many other data security vendors in that space, it focused on securing production data, right? So it provided capabilities to discover, classify structured data in databases, and then apply access controls to improve the security posture of the database, the data in the databases. And while I was there, the overwhelming feedback I was hearing from a lot of security and privacy teams was that that kind of model was great, but also very reactive, right? That they were kind of struggling to keep pace with the rapid changes in the application's code bases. And so a lot of the questions that have come up during those conversations was, how can we stop PIIs from leaking to begin with, instead of having to deal with it and catch it once it's already in production, where it's much more expensive to deal with, and they have to kind of deal with the ripple effect, because once it leaks into one log, that log may end up being ingested by 20 different other tools, whether it's observability, monitoring, error reporting, SIM products, etc. Right? And then so that's from like the PI leak perspective. And then from the privacy perspective, a lot of the questions that were coming up was around, how do we establish a reliable method for documenting processing activities that can keep up with the code bases, and that will allow us to kind of not be surprised by product changes that are introducing new data collections that need lawful processing, right? Because today that documentation processing activities is riddled with a lot of manual error prone processes. And there's like two sets of companies that are doing this completely manually, which is using manual spreadsheets and surveys to various business units to really understand what systems are collecting user data and what kind of where that data is being stored. Or they would use like a data privacy platform, but then again, just with the data leak prevention kind of story, it's kind of reactive. It's not kind of connected to what's actually happening in the code base.
Now, when we look at HoundDog.ai, or if you look at data driver, as you also mentioned GDPR. So when we look at data security is important. Compliance play a big role, which is about, so there's security, there's privacy, of course compliance is there, and there are so many other things that are associated with that. When we talk about security, I don't want to open the can of worms. It could be misconfiguration, it could be bugs. So what kind of challenges that you see customers still face today when it comes to these, whether it's data security or privacy compliance?
There's two sets of challenges that we're addressing, right? One is, and by the way, the challenges both fall under the same theme, which is the current processes or tool set is just too reactive, right? We're trying to catch things as developers are writing code, as opposed to having to deal with things in production, which is very expensive, right? But the two sets of challenges are on the data leak detection and remediation. That, as I said, is very reactive. in 2023, there was a report by IBM that indicated that 92% of compromised data in the various data breaches that they kind of documented involved either customer or employee personally identifiable information. So that's basically like what the hackers are extracting, right? They're exfiltrating PII data ultimately from production systems. They obviously find different ways to kind of get to those systems and compromise and exfiltrate that data. But that's what they're after, right? And when it comes to PII leaks through logs or like files and so forth, the remediation is very expensive, right? So imagine a PII leaking into logs, for example, right? First, they need to do the code change by either omitting or masking the data. So they have to go back into development, make the code change. Then they have to access the access log reviews, right? They have to figure out who accessed those logs. What's the blast radius? Who was able to see this PII data? And then depending on what kind of data was exposed, right? They may need to do incident reporting, notify customers, and all of that. Just putting aside the reputational damage and the kind of the compliance fines that they may have to deal with. So all of that is we estimated that just to kind of remediate one issue in production, it takes at least 80 hours of work to go through all of that, right? And to kind of increase or to make things even worse, right, is that when something leaks in a log, that log may end up being ingested by 20 other tools, right? Like Datadog, Sentry for monitoring and error reporting. It may end up going to SIM products like Sumo Logic and Splunk. It may end up in backup systems. And so it kind of drastically increases the amount of work that you have to do and repeat for each and every single leak. So it would be much better to just prevent it from the beginning, right? And the similar set of challenges are on the data privacy side. As I mentioned, there's like two sets of customers or companies. Ones that are trying to do the documentation of processing activities completely manually. So and there's like based on a survey that was done by one of the data privacy vendors, 58% of the companies interviewed said that they need 6 to 12 months in addition to multiple teams and an external vendor in order to identify all the systems handling user data and be able to create that unified data map, right? So it's all done through spreadsheets, surveys, tribal knowledge, asking kind of engineering leads and heads to kind of understand what is the data we're collecting, where is it going, and it's as you can imagine, it's a very error-prone type of situation, and it doesn't keep up with the code changes because it's not like you document it once and the application is not going to change. The application is continuously changing, and so privacy teams are kind of like under a lot of pressure to keep up with all these changes. So these are the kind of the two sets of problems that we're addressing.
When it comes to privacy versus security, can you also talk about if these are two different, of course, but when I say two different things, I'm asking more about privacy and, security. Does it fall under, security team, DevSecOps team, CISOs, or these are two different areas where different personas are responsible?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are different personas. Typically, for the data leak prevention, we're basically selling to the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, typically targeting the application security program because we are ultimately a code scanner and they're responsible for plugging in other code scanners that check for other code vulnerabilities. It just happens that we are focusing on PII data leaks at the code level. And then for the privacy, it's a completely different buyer. Like you said, there's a chief privacy officer. Sometimes there's like GRC type of departments and counsel that are basically tasked with actually making sure that they get the compliance done for the company, right? Whether it's GDPR or CCPA for California. And, these privacy laws are popping up like literally every few months in different states. And there's a concerted effort at the US government to try to kind of consolidate, just like GDPR for Europe. But in the meantime, you have companies literally trying to kind of keep up with all these like compliance regulations in order to avoid fines. Last year, uh, the amount of GDPR fines hit a record high of 2.2 billion, up from zero point 0.9 billion the year before. So it's not like these companies are not getting fined; they're getting fined a lot, right? Just because they may not be able to produce the right documentation or have violated certain things within the regulation. And so that's what companies have to deal with in order to comply with privacy regulations.
When you look at Gen AI, of course, the word addicted out, but I still, people, how we talk to ChatGPT, it makes things exciting. But when it comes to really putting it in product, when it's coming to actually security or things like privacy, do you feel that Gen AI is the successor next step, or you're saying, hey, we have been using AI for a long time, it's just little bit more is not a transformative technology, or you're like, hey, this is going to change the game?
I feel it is definitely a game changer. I attended RSA conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a session as part of the B-Sides conference, which happens right before RSA, that was done by the person who is like basically running TLDR-sec. And it was an excellent session that talked about like the AI's applications in various security use cases, right? And he kind of references various open source projects and research projects. The conclusion in my head, right, is that AI is great if you simplify the task for it, right? So, for example, for code scanning, one of the things that we actually tried to do in the beginning was, hey, let's see if OpenAI or other kind of leading kind of LLM models can actually scan the whole code base and be able to identify the sensitive data flows that we're identifying, and then find the vulnerabilities and so forth, right? And it did a horrible job at it, because it's you're giving it a humongous task. You're trying to kind of reinvent the static code analysis, and kind of give it a lot of like hierarchical granular tasks within that Uber task, and it just won't be able to kind of at least the models that exist today are not able to kind of do that properly, right? But where we found it to be extremely helpful, right, is when we discover the tokens, right? So we do the hard work of finding all the variable, function, method names within a code base, and then we give it a specific task, right? We say, hey, based on the naming of these things, right, which ones do you think is handling sensitive data, and give me back like a confidence score, right? And it perfected that task very well, and that's how we kind of baked AI into this whole thing. And now our precision rate is upwards of like 95% based on the amount of testing we've done. So it helped complement what we have, complement the library of sensitive data definitions that we already have, that gives you 80% coverage. With AI you get like 95%. Gives you that additional coverage and precision. But that's not like to negate that what we've built also, like around the novel and advanced kind of analyses around taint and interprocedural analysis that help expand the coverage of true positive matches that we find. You also need that stuff, and you just need to figure out how to plug AI in the right way in order to kind of basically boost that workflow that you're working on.
When it comes to security, privacy, compliance, what leads to what? Compliance lead to better security practices, better security technologies, or right approach towards security and privacy leads to make you compliant?
I would say you're absolutely right that that like being compliant doesn't necessarily mean that you're secure, and so there are kind of like different check boxes, if you will, right? Like if you are just looking to kind of check the GDPR box and like willing to kind of shell a certain amount of money in order to complete that task, then you may not be thinking about like, hey, am I reducing the risk of data breaches here? Am I really like reducing the blast radius? Because that's not what you're going into this task just to get that checkbox done, right? But you'll find a lot of the security-minded leaders in a lot of the big organizations are kind of doing it out of necessity because they've, like I'm a customer of T-Mobile, for example, and T-Mobile had a couple of breaches just in the span of like 6-7 years, right? And so you like when these incidents happen and it affects their bottom line, it affects reputation, it affects many different things. Then it becomes a very true necessity to like, okay, let's get our security program in a way that we're really preventing data breaches and not just trying to comply with SOC 2 and NIST and various standards, right?
Can you also talk about within this 1 year, what kind of course, you may or may not be able to share names, what kind of customers you have, use cases, if you can share with us?
Yeah, so we have several customers. One is a referenceable customer. It's a company called Jovari. It's a medium-sized health tech company that is providing emergency preparedness software. And because they have to deal with protected health information, PHI, including they basically, and this stuff is public, you can go to their privacy notice that's published on their website, but they deal with, various medical information around vital signs, medical health records, medical record numbers, in addition to the personally identifiable information, right? And so for them, even though they have very good security controls, very advanced and mature secure development processes, they also wanted to have this defense in depth, right? They also wanted to make sure that whatever, as the code is changing, that there's no leakage of sensitive data into logs, into files, into third-party systems, because they can't afford that, right? Because ultimately, when you're dealing with such sensitive information, you can't afford having these things leaked into logs and be kind of susceptible to potential breaches and so forth. And so that's how they've implemented us, and they are using our scanner in GitLab, and they preferred the model where they plug in the scanner into the GitLab CI/CD, and then it publishes the findings directly into GitLab's vulnerability report, right? So they don't have to log into a cloud platform and view the results, even though we have that offering. But some customers prefer kind of dealing with the issues in the security dashboard that they work with, right? Whether it's GitLab or GitHub. And of course, there's another set of customers that love kind of going into one single cloud platform where they see the consolidated list of issues across all the code repos they're monitoring and be able to file Jira tickets and get alerts via Slack and email. And so that's kind of the other model. But yeah, Javari is kind of focused on the GitLab workflow. One of the things I would love to share is just around quantifying this return on investment. That's something that we have an ROI calculator on our website. And so, as I mentioned, we have like these two use cases. One is this PI leak prevention, and the other is around automating the documentation of processing activities for privacy compliance. And what we've discovered is that if you find a single issue with as far as a PII leak issue in production, it will take on average, if not at least 80 hours to address it, right? And this includes code updates, access log reviews, risk assessments, incident reporting, and so forth. And so from all the customers that we've been working with, we've been finding 5 vulnerabilities per 100,000 lines of code. And so what that essentially means is that any company will be able to save at least 2 full-time employees for every 1 million lines of code scanned. That's for the security leak prevention. And then for the privacy one, for every 250 code repos scanned, you'll be saving 2 full-time employees, because it takes a very long time to just manually document the data flows and update them every year for for privacy compliance, and namely GDPR, right? So you're ultimately, we're not only just improving the security posture and helping you get compliance done, we're doing it at like a fraction of the cost. You're saving a lot of cost by kind of using a proactive approach to doing this.
Can you now talk about the growth plan, or the how you have seen the growth of the company, and also please talk about the 3.1 million seed round. What are the areas where you are going to invest in to further grow the company?
We have an awesome team of 5 engineers at this point. We're going to continue to invest in R&D. We feel like the product that we have is mature enough, but there's obviously still more work to do. And so we're going to continue on rolling out those features as we move along. And then since now we've emerged from stealth and now we're kind of publicly announcing our offering, we're going to be investing more in marketing and sales, making sure that we participate in the events that security and privacy practitioners can participate in. Yeah.
Amjad, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about the company and the whole ecosystem. Thanks for great insights, and I would love to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swapnil. Yeah.